Lecture 11. Gateway. Research and development for seed improvement has long been a public domain and government activity for the common good. However, private capital started to flow into seed production and took it over as a sector of the economy, creating an artificial split between the two aspects of the seed's nature: its role as means of production and its role as product. This process gained pace after the invention of hybrid breeding of maize in the late 1920s. Today, most maize seed cultivated are hybrids. The companies that sell them are able to keep the distinct parent lines from farmers, and the grain that they produce is not suited for seed saving and replanting. The combination guarantees that farmers will have to buy more seed from the company each season. In the 1990s, the extension of patent laws as the only intellectual property rights tool into the area of seed varieties started to create a growing market for private seed companies. Exercise 1. Checking a relationship from time to time can help prevent serious difficulties from arising. Too often with a relationship, as with our health, we assume everything is fine until something goes wrong. Just as visiting a doctor for a regular checkup can help maintain the health of our bodies, so an occasional reflective checkup can help maintain the well-being of an important relationship. It can be useful to think in general terms about the implicit goal of a relationship and the strategy for reaching that goal. Reviewing each element, with the relationship partner if possible, we can identify areas that require attention. Sitting side by side, recalling recent encounters, and listing specific questions for discussion can stimulate fresh ideas for improving our pattern of interaction. Exercise 2. Be very careful when writing material based upon someone else's work, since copyright law prohibits you from copying someone else's work without their permission. If you bring a property to a studio or a producer, and it's based on a book, play, or someone's life story, our advice is to tell them. It complicates matters, but it's much better to take care of rights issues up front. If you can't deliver clean rights to your work, you'll risk undermining yourself and the people you're trying to do business with. More than one production has been killed by a studio's legal department because the writer of the adaptation didn't secure the necessary rights. Once a project is ready for production, it can become very difficult and expensive to clear these problems up. Exercise 3. A brief experiment filmed by Soviet director Lev Kuleshov demonstrates a film editing effect. It was a scene consisting of 5 shots, each taken separately in a different location. When assembled in a particular sequence, they created a unity of space that had no existence in reality. The film showed a boy approaching a girl, their meeting, the boy pointing to a building in the distance, the two starting off toward the building, and finally, both climbing up flights of steps together. The first 3 shots were photographed in different sections of Moscow. The 4th was a picture of the White House taken from an old American movie. The 5th shot was photographed at the steps of a church in Leningrad. When the shots were joined, places which in actuality are thousands of miles apart were brought together and made to look as though they were concentrated in a small area that could be covered in a few paces by the actors. Exercise 4. The intellect cannot command the emotions, but it can channel currently existing emotional energy. If, for example, the emotions want X, the intellect might talk them into wanting to do Y by pointing out that doing it will get them X. As soon as the emotions are convinced that doing Y will get them X, the anxiety they felt with respect to X will transfer to Y. The intellect can then point out to the emotions that by doing Z, they can get Y. Again, the anxiety will transfer. In this manner, anxiety flows down the chains of desire formed by the intellect. We thereby become motivated to fulfill the instrumental desires in these chains, even though doing so won't itself feel good. Indeed, even though doing so will feel bad. Exercise 5. Suppose you've created a scenario in which a character pilots an airplane from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Getting to Las Vegas is his objective. When he climbs into the cockpit, he'll check the fuel instrument panel, the brakes, and the controls. His actions have a purpose toward his objective of flying to Las Vegas. Everything else is in support of that. His objective informs his actions. His actions speak of his objectives. And if he's flying to Las Vegas to get married, the way he checks the fuel instrument panel will be affected. If the weather forecast calls for thunderstorms along the flight route, a bystander watching him in the cockpit might notice that he seems nervous. No one would know he is bound for Las Vegas, but they can tell by his energy whether he is just tidying the cockpit or if he is preparing the plane for a trip. If he has an objective, there will be purposefulness in his movements. And his feeling about his upcoming trip will also affect his body movement. Exercise 6. Like a muscle, willpower has limited capacity, and when exercised extensively, it can become worn out. Also like a muscle, the primary fuel your brain uses to exercise willpower is sugar from your blood. So when your blood sugar is low, i.e. when you're hungry, which when you're dieting is pretty much all the time, your willpower is weaker than ever, and the only way to fix it is to eat. You can see the difficulty this can cause when you're making food decisions. Throwing exercise into the equation, something dieters use to intentionally burn more calories, i.e. use more blood sugar, only makes things more problematic. Baumeister and Tierney call it a nutritional catch-22. The less you eat and the more you exercise, the less likely you will be to make good food decisions in the end and maintain your weight loss.